Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 4th Annual HyFlex Collaborative Conference. It's truly wonderful to see so many familiar faces joining us from around the world. Whether you're with us from your office, your home, a campus, a coffee shop, or perhaps somewhere with much better view than the rest of us, we're delighted you're here. Before we begin, I'd like to share a quick story. Like many of you, I grew up watching the Jetsons after school. While most people laughed at the flying cars and Rosie the robot, I found myself fascinated by something much simpler. George Jetson, teleconferencing to work, video calling his family, and collaborating with people who weren't even in the same room. Call me an optimist, but I always believed it was science fiction. I believed it was science eventually. So, it wasn't science fiction. It was science eventually. I remember thinking, I hope I live long enough to see this become reality. Well, mission accomplished. Today we are gathered from around the globe without boarding a plane, crossing multiple time zones, or leaving our homes. We collaborate across continents, share ideas in real time, and now we're exploring how artificial intelligence is transforming teaching and learning in ways that even the Jetsons probably never imagined. As George Jetson famously exclaimed, "Jane, stop this crazy thing." I have a feeling that it's exactly what many educators have been saying every time another AI tool is released. And those of us who grew up with the Jetsons, when you know, you know. Now, I'm still waiting for my flying car. Evidently, that's still beta. That's still in beta. Oh, well. But oh, the possibilities. The Jetsons imagine incredible technology. We have the privilege and the responsibility of imagining what incredible learning can look like because of it. That's an even more exciting future. Our hope is that today is more than just another virtual conference. We hope it's a place where ideas are challenged, assumptions are reconsidered, collaborations are formed, and everyone leaves with an idea that changes the way they teach, lead, or design learning. If at any point during the day you encounter a technical difficulty or have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me directly. We'll do everything we can to get you back into the conversation as quickly as possible. Most importantly, enjoy the day, ask questions, share your experiences in the chat, meet someone new, and the best conferences aren't measured by the number of presentations. They're remembered because of the conversations they inspire. Before we welcome our keynote speaker, I'd like to recognize the incredible people who made today possible. As much as I would love to recruit Rosie the robot to organize registrations, coordinate presenters, answer emails, troubleshoot technology, and keep us all on schedule, it turns out Rosie wasn't available. Fortunately, I had something even better. Please join me in recognizing our outstanding HyFlex team: Brian Beatty, Lori Hink, Jason Vickers, Jeannie Samuels, Reza Faye-Bana, and Gina Riley, and of course, yours truly, Jerry Rivera Wilson. This team has spent countless hours planning, organizing, testing technology, solving problems before anyone knew they existed, and making sure today's conference would be a meaningful experience for every participant. Would you please join me in showing them your appreciation with a round of applause, or, since we're a virtual, a flood of applause emojis in the chat? The Jetsons imagined the technology. The team made the experience possible. Now, it is my distinct honor to introduce someone whose work has shaped the way many of us think about flexible learning. Dr. Brian Beatty is widely recognized as the father of HyFlex. Long before flexibility became an educational necessity, Brian envisioned a learning model built on learner choice. equivalence, accessibility, and meaningful engagement. His pioneering scholarship transformed an innovative instructional approach into a global movement that continues to influence educators across the higher education, P-12 schools, and professional learning and workforce development. Today, he'll help us explore not only where HyFlex has been, but where it's headed as artificial intelligence and emerging technologies redefine what's possible for teaching and learning. So please help join me in giving a warm HyFlex collaborative conference welcome to Dr. Brian Beatty. And before I officially hand over the virtual stage to Brian, let me leave you with one final thought. Today's conference is all about learner choice. Choose to ask questions, choose to challenge ideas, choose to meet someone new, choose to leave with one idea that will change your practice. The only choice I wouldn't recommend is checking your email or phone during Brian's keynote. Trust me, he's much more interesting than your inbox or text. Thank you for spending your day with us. Have a wonderful conference. Enjoy every session, and may your curiosity be high, your Wi-Fi be strong, your AI be helpful. And if anyone discovers when the flying cars finally come out of beta, please let me know. Welcome to HCC 26. Let's reimagine the future of learning together. Brian.
Thanks, Jerry, for that wonderful introduction. I hope to be as interesting as your inbox and maybe better. I don't know. But anyway, I'm really happy to be able to be with you today again. And thank you for joining us for this fourth conference, the HyFlex Collaborative Conference. And as we I hadn't really thought about this, but in my mind, at least, HyFlex is now 20 years old this year. Starting in 2006 with my first attempt at teaching this way in one graduate class with a small group of students of 20 to 25. And it's kind of grown quite a bit. We, as many of you have experienced, HyFlex had an incredibly growth in popularity over the last 6 years. And now we're seeing a bit of a pullback in some places because the extreme need to have students in different places is as relaxed in some sense. But I would argue and make the point that the need for approaches like HyFlex, the flexible learning opportunity, especially around participation as a base level of access for students, has never been more important. And I think if we go back to the key principles about how this all started, providing really access, good access, quality access to equitable learning opportunities for students, that hasn't changed. All the stuff around us has changed. And clearly, in the world of today, AI has been a player, continues to be, a motivator for change in a lot of the ways we're doing our things, including education. And so we're all reacting to this and hopefully being proactive and looking at ways that we can help shape kind of where education's going in the light of artificial intelligence of all sorts, including on the design level, the development level, as well as the facilitating learning level. We're also all lifelong learners. And so as we go through our lives, we're learning how to do this ourselves. And I think that one of the things that we often do as designers and faculty is we bring what we're learning about our own learning into the ways that we want to develop our teaching. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Yeah, no less important. Back to the basics. Let's make sure that we're continuing with the core of that. And so I'm excited to kind of kick this off. And I think I'm going to get started with that. Now I'm going to do the Zoom thing and make sure I'm showing exactly what I want to be sharing.
And
So
while you
here,
do that, Brian, I'm going to share the welcome message from the Dean of the School of Education, Ginny Goatley.
okay, sounds good.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ginny Goatley, and I'm the Dean at the University of Albany School of Education.
and hopefully you'll be able to all hear it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Good morning, everyone. My name is Ginny Goatley, and I'm the Dean at the University of Albany School of Education. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2026 HyFlex Collaborative Conference. We are honored to partner with the HyFlex Collaborative and the New York State Association of Teacher Educators. What began as an important conversation about hybrid flexible learning has evolved into an international community of educators, researchers, instructional designers, technologists, and institutional leaders committed to expanding equitable, accessible, and future-focused learning opportunities across K-12 and higher education environments. At a time when education systems around the world are reimagining how learning is accessed, experienced, and sustained, this work has never been more important. The fourth year, this year's conference theme, Revisioning HyFlex through AI and other emerging technology, invites us to think boldly about the future of teaching and learning. Across today's sessions and discussions, participants from around the globe will explore how artificial intelligence, adaptive technologies, immersive learning environments, and innovative instructional strategies are reshaping hybrid flexible education to strengthen student choice, engagement, accessibility, and meaningful participation across modalities. Whether joining us synchronously online or asynchronously, your presence strengthens this international learning community and reflects the very principles that HyFlex learning seeks to advance. At the University at Albany School of Education, we are especially proud to support and advance this work because it reflects our long-standing commitment to educational innovation, access, and excellence. For more than 25 years, our faculty and programs have helped lead the development of high-quality online and flexible learning environments. In recognition of the sustained commitment, the School of Education has been ranked among the top 10 graduate schools of education in the nation for online graduate programs by the U.S. News and World Report for 10 consecutive years, currently at number 4. The HyFlex Collaborative continues to demonstrate that flexible learning is not simply about technology or modality. At its core, it's about expanding opportunity, honoring learner agency, and designing educational experiences that are responsive to the realities of today's learners and tomorrow's world. I would like to extend a special thank you and welcome to our keynote speaker, Dr. Brian Beatty, Professor of Instructional Design and Technology at San Francisco State University, an internationally recognized leader in HyFlex learning. We are deeply grateful to all presenters, sponsors, planning committee members, and attendees whose scholarship, creativity, and collaboration make this conference possible. Finally, I'd like to recognize Dr. Jerry Rivera Wilson. She's the director of the Academy for the Advancement of Teaching Leadership in Schools, ATLAS, and the Professional Development and Special Programs in the School of Education, and to the members of the HyFlex Collaborative for their extraordinary leadership and vision in bringing this international learning community together once again. Thank you for being with us today. We hope the conference inspires new ideas, meaningful dialogue, and lasting professional connections as we collectively re-envision the future of hybrid flexible learning. Together, we are not simply responding to the future of learning, we're helping to shape it. Enjoy the conference.
Are you looking for a new form builder for your WordPress site?
Okay. On to the keynote. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I have this set up right. And go from there. And we'll go to presenter view. And maybe I should go back to the very beginning, huh? Let's get out of that for a second. And you probably see the wrong view. Which do you see?
I see your speaker notes and your
Okay. Let's go back to the beginning and swap this. Now you see the right screen. Is that correct?
I see your screen and your side screen and your speaker notes.
Okay. All right, let's do this differently then. I'm going to share this way. Let's go here.
Do you want me to call Rosie?
No, actually, I don't. I just want it to work. Let's see if we can just do this. You're still seeing the...
Why don't you just go on to the very top and hit use slideshow or swap displays?
Yeah, that normally works. And today, are you still seeing the side?
We are.
Okay. Well, then we're going to go away from that and just do, let's just do something like this.
Why don't you just go up to where it says slideshow and hit slideshow and start from the beginning up on your toolbar. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Hit that button. Huh,
That didn't work, did it? How about this?
that works.
Wonderful. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today, I calling AI at the right moment, is really especially AI at the moment of learning need. You'll see that terminology used quite a bit. So what I'm going to put this in a way that hopefully that we'll talk about the way we're supporting students in their learning adventure with AI, not just in HyFlex courses, essentially in any course, essentially. I teach primarily HyFlex courses, although I taught my first fully asynchronous online course to an undergraduate class of about 50 in the spring. I did not want to do that, but it became important for me to do it, and I learned so much from that. I'm glad I did it, although if it hadn't been started already, sold to students as an asynchronous online course, I would have never started it that way. But anyway, AI will support us in all the ways that we're doing this. And so I'll be talking a lot about how I'm using AI to support learners, and then specifically maybe in particular areas, and maybe there are conversations around this can be, okay, for HyFlex students, what's specific about this? Typically, I'm going to go through these kind of 5 things. What are the challenges of learner support? Well, why, starting with the idea of, well, how do we use AI is kind of the wrong place to start. And it really should be focused more on, okay, well, what do the learners need? And then how can AI support that need with us? We'll talk about AMON or AI and the moment of learning need as kind of a framework that I've been using for design. Hopefully, if we have some time, I'll take a look at some course examples, 1 or 2. I think I'll do that pretty quickly since I know that we're a bit short on time. And then we'll talk about design principles. I will also be able to share the slides at the end, as well as there'll be a pretty substantial proceedings paper that will be part of the anthology after the conference. So when we talk about HyFlex, what we're really saying is that we're going to give students flexible choices, flexibility in how they're participating in the learning activities for a particular course. This is not new to anyone. We're trying to make sure we give them meaningful choices. But as we do this, and if you've done this at all, you know, you've designed it or you've facilitated it yourself, the need for student support can be a lot higher for many students when they're trying to make choices about how to participate than when they're in a particular path. As a matter of fact, I started my AI journey a couple of years ago, primarily looking at how do I support students who are in my HyFlex courses who are choosing an asynchronous mode, who do not really want to be asynchronous students, who may not be really prepared to be an asynchronous students. As a matter of fact, in those days, I think the first time I wrote about this, I called it essentially serving what I called an accidental asynchronous student, who's someone who's in a HyFlex course who ends up in the asynchronous mode, either because of their day-to-day choices or because they just have a time conflict with the synchronous session, but they're not really prepared and they don't want to do that. Not necessarily the student who's choosing asynchronous because they're a good student that way and they like learning that way. But anyway, we have these different paths, and so the learner support needs, not necessarily get multiplied, but they are more complicated when you're offering different participation modes. And oftentimes the real problem is that, my classes often work from a Wednesday through Tuesday cycle for a particular week. And when students need support, I'm not necessarily there to give them. I may not have built the support into the class itself as far as the text or maybe a little video about this or that or the other thing, because sometimes their needs are, well, not sometimes, most of the time their needs are unique, or they're personalized for them in particular. And so when they have the needs, I don't necessarily have the ability to meet those needs, or they might not have peers who can meet their needs, and maybe no one can particularly do that because it's a different kind of need we never actually seen before. So they need help between class meetings. They need help outside of office hours. The other thing that I've recognized early on in my teaching careers, even when I was teaching just face-to-face students in classroom, kind of where many of us probably started our teaching careers, if that's what we're doing, um, most students were learning much, if not most of what they're learning out of class anyway, outside of the normal class session. And so essentially everyone is kind of jumping into this asynchronous learning mode, whether or not they're coming to class in person or not. So that's an important thing, I think, to realize, as well as for our faculty who are teaching and are focused so much on that class presentation, so much on that class time interaction with students, they can tend to ignore the rest of the week, the 99% of the students' time that they're not spent in class and I think we really miss an opportunity. So if we can provide learner support that works when the students need it and how they need it and where they need it, I think that we're really doing them a service. So when we talk about this idea of equivalent access to materials and equitable access to materials, I think it includes providing opportunities for the support, not just the content access. Right? Oftentimes, when I talk about this in workshops and things like that, we start focusing on content, and then we talk also a little bit about assessment and engagement. But really, the learner support, I haven't often focused on that. But I really think that the AI piece of this is primarily for learner support in their learning journey. So now we're asking questions like, not how do we add AI to our courses or to HyFlex? There's actually many of us started probably with that question. That question's still going on our campuses. But I think the real question to ask is, how can AI help us to support learners at the moments when flexibility makes support harder to provide or just when they need it in their learning journey? Specifically for HyFlex, are there situations that arise because we're offering students in multiple modes of access that actually make this even more difficult for them or can make it more difficult for them? I'll also say that a lot of our students are just fine at HyFlex courses and don't have kind of the challenges that we see in some students and that we can kind of conjecture in our own minds about the extreme difficulty of making that choice. For many students, it's not an extreme difficult choice. It's an easy choice because it's what they have access to or what they prefer. And if we provide them these options, they're going to find what they want as long as it meets whatever other constraints they have. So oftentimes the choice is not difficult for them, and yet for some of them maybe it is. And so sometimes that's the kind of support we need. It's easy for us to, especially if we're working with people and more from an academic or a technology perspective, to focus on the tools. Well, what can the tools do? We can give you ChatGPT to do this. We can give you Boodlebox to do this. We can give you what about this? These development tools, Napkin AI or Notebook LM or various things like that. We look at what the tools can do. And then say, well, okay, now how can I bring this into my class? Rather than focusing on, especially for the learners, what do the learners need? Okay, if they need this, now how can we provide that for them? Can we provide that for them in good ways with what we have already? Or do we need some additional support for that? And that's where AI kind of filters in here. I think if we can start with a learner first approach towards this, I think we're more likely to be able to avoid the bells and whistles piece, avoid the, kind of the maybe following the trends perhaps, or what everyone is saying, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, rather than starting with, here's the rationale, here's the reason why we need to do this. Kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier before we started the keynote around the kind of the core reason for doing this and why faculty don't understand and are kind of bought into the core reason why HyFlex itself is important for many learners. The ability to access, the quality learning experience through different participation modes. It's the same idea here with AI. If we can start with the idea that we're trying to support but deeper learning, we're not trying to just give them a tool to use because a tool focus often leads to this idea of, well, if the tool can do this for me, why don't I just use it for this? Why don't I have it write my paper for me? Or why don't I have it give me all these answers to this, this thing? Or how about draft my essay responses to this test I know I'm going to have, so that I can just basically regurgitate what they told me, as opposed to a tool that says, okay, if the learning challenge is this, and here, we want to find out, well, where are you struggling with this challenge? And so how can we help you then get through that struggle, get over that hurdle so that you can continue the learning path? So just because we bring AI in or add more AI, perhaps even, is not going to make better learning. It might make better productivity if our productivity is measured by what we're creating for grading, right? If the productivity is really measured by how much are you learning, it actually can basically undermine that completely. So this is important, I think, to keep in mind is that the value of the AI tool doesn't really, get to it's not determined by what it can do. It's often determined more by when does it help me, how does it help me, and where do I go to with its particular aspect of support. So if we don't frame this right with our learners, and this starts in the design place of this, in my opinion, at least, we can give them tools that actually replace productive struggle, right, with just solutions that reduce their learner agency by driving them in a particular direction. This has actually been something many of us have been concerned with for a while. AI solutions tend to feel and look a particular way. I know I have students who are, especially ones who are pretty good writers, so I don't use AI at all in the writing process because I don't like the way it changes what I would want to say, and it says it its way as opposed to my way, which is an important thing to realize. And it also, can tend to weaken human connections. If I don't have to rely on my peers or my teacher or those kinds of interactions that we normally have, even if they're asynchronous, and I can just get all that support from an AI tool, well, why bother with the human connection at all? That can certainly be something that some students, might choose for, and actually some of them are probably choosing that today. So let's reframe this a little bit. Instead of what can AI do, I think this perspective ought to be more like, well, what does the learner need now, and what kind of support will preserve learning? I don't think we have to worry about students. Most of your students are probably going to use AI. I know most of my students do. Not all of them do. I believe what they tell me, but I think most of them do. And I know that even when I provide them tools in the classes, many of them use the tools and many of them don't use the tools. Many of them use the tools in ways I didn't necessarily intend them to, and sometimes I learn from that. But what we're really looking for is identifying where can we provide them support that helps them in the learning journey, should they choose to continue that journey. Students are still going to have to make that choice to continue on with the learning piece and not replace their own learning. Because even if I give them particular tools or we give them particular tools to use, they can always find other tools they're more than happy to please their need and their desire and or meet their desire to write something for them. I'm trying to discourage that by giving them tools that help them learn, and then talk about them in the class a little bit about, well, how is this helping you learn? So we're going to start with the learning need. And so this idea of AI in the moment of learning need starts with identifying where are these needs and then designing the right support around that moment. And this is based on the whole idea of the moments of need comes from literature in the training world, the 5 moments of need. And the references are available in the proceedings paper. But essentially, it was focused on in the training. When do productive employees need training? And has a lot of connection to education, especially higher education, where basically the productivity of the students, the kind of the task that they have to do is learning, right? So when they're getting started, when they're confused, when they're trying to apply things in different ways, when things are changing in the environment, when they're asked to learn more content, those are all points in the process that are similar between this idea of 5 moments of need as far as a training perspective, and I think in the learning process. So basically, this framework is built upon that cycle, those moments. And if you're familiar with that, you might notice that. So are they starting out? So how do we help them get started out? In a HyFlex course, sometimes this is where some challenges come in with, okay, what about the participation? How should I choose to participate? What does it mean to be an asynchronous learner? What does it mean to be an online synchronous learner? What about combinations of those approaches? What's the best approach for me to take? And so the tools can help them kind of go through a reasoning process for that. How about learning information? Something's difficult. I have this paper I'm reading, or even these 3 paragraphs in this particular textbook chapter. I'm just not getting it. Can I have a tool, or can we give them the tool that says, hey, take those 3 paragraphs and using appropriate, data privacy and protection kind of approaches, can I have it restated to me? Right. Can you tell me a story that helps me get the big idea here so that when I go back and reread those 3 paragraphs, now it's making sense because I understand the big picture and it wasn't written in a way that gave me the big picture before. How about a particular problem I'm having? Not necessarily just to solve a problem to apply a concept, but maybe I'm having a problem in the learning process. I need another resource to do that. Oh, if I can only find a video that could do this, that could help explain this, or whatever it might be, to solve those kinds of learning problems. Or when things are changing, I was learning this with this idea. Now I'm being asked to do a project and the context is shifting. Or something else happens that I wasn't expecting. Can I get some help getting through that process? Or to extend my learning later? And to tools, if we can help them learn how to use tools to extend their learning, then obviously we're helping to create more lifelong learners like we are all working towards. So idea here is that we're going to try to scaffold or support the learning and not substitute or supplant the learning. Right? The goal is not to remove difficulty. That challenge, that cognitive challenge, is critical for the learning process. Right? We cannot give them tools to replace that. Right? To make this will make it easier for you. Can we make it easier for you? Anything that makes it easier for you to kind of get what you need out of this class is the better. Unfortunately, that may be what some of us are focused on, or others from external perspectives might look at us and say, well, we'll just make it easier for them. They're having struggles with this. How do we make it easy? Well, sometimes it's a extraneous load, which means that the way we're asking them to do something is difficult in itself, not because of the nature of what they're learning, but because of the process. Maybe that process could be simplified without kind of making the actual learning less challenging for them. What we're trying to do is, like I said, is to reduce these unnecessary barriers, but we want to preserve that productive struggle, right? And so when I provide tools for students, oftentimes when it's focused on a particular assignment or application, I'm writing tools for them and giving them tools that are helping them walk through the process, not skip the process, not avoid the process, and certainly never to kind of write solutions for them. Unfortunately, they can find tools that will do that, that aren't created by academics necessarily, but by the system of AI. Not the AI itself, of course, but the people behind it. It's easy to supplant learning. It's easy to substitute for learning. In some aspects of life, you may not have to understand how to do a particular process to get to the result you need. And sometimes that's fine for what we're doing in general life, but not in the learning process. So we're looking for deep understanding. We're looking for transferable skills, right? And basically we're building lifelong learners. Okay. So when we're talking about the design, how do we go about this? Well, I think that the AI support, we should be working alongside of the other systems, right, that we have. We have peers in our classes that students can rely on each other for support. And so a good design will include peer interaction around supporting the learning process for each one. Of course, the instructors are there. This is what we're doing in higher education. Can you replace an instructor with an AI? I don't think you can do that in an educational perspective, although we've been doing this in a training perspective for years. We call it e-learning, right, where there's no instructor there and there's no interaction. And you get a certain kind of task level learning that can be very effective for those particular needs. But that is not what we're doing in higher education, right? So we have live instructors or real instructors, and whether they're teaching asynchronously or synchronously or in the classroom, doesn't really matter. This idea of instructor presence is critical, and it will always be critical for a high quality educational experience. The resources, right? So that's part of the ecology as well. Resources. This is where AI can particularly be relevant because it can create resources with appropriate curation, I guess, but also identify resources that it's not creating, but it's identifying resources. And so I think as the system gets better at what it's doing, and as we get better at overseeing and managing the system, I think that'll be even more important for students to learn how to use it to find just the right resource for them. Providing feedback. That's part of our ecology as well. Students are getting feedback from the materials themselves, the expert resources, but also from the faculty and from the students and from the faculty, or the faculty, I already said that, yes. But it can also get feedback from an AI tool. It gets different kind of feedback from these different aspects. And so having a range of all these kinds of feedbacks can be really helpful. And of course, to support the reflective process. This is one place I found that AI can be very effective, is helping students walk through a reflective process during or after a particular learning experience, even a course experience, and get them to ask questions or answer questions themselves, and maybe even ask questions differently than they would have before, just with a simple report. Yeah, reflect on your learning experience. How did it go? What was good? What do you remember? Those kinds of things. So what we're going to do then is kind of shift this idea of how do we do this in design, right? So let's take a look at a particular assignment. We've got an assignment. And so what we have to do is look within that assignment, that assignment process. Where are the potential moments of learning need or moments of learning support need for the particular students? And at those particular moments, can AI provide some support? And then what is the student expected to do with them? So it's kind of a simple process that can be helpful here. So how about getting started with an assignment? So we're going to be challenged here. I'm going to stop the share here, and I'm going to try to show you what I do this in a course. And we probably do this for one course. And so if I stop this and I share differently, this will go better because I do this more often than else. Let's see. Here we go. And now I'm over on this screen, so I'm looking over here. Okay, so this is an undergraduate course I teach. It's large from my perspective. It's 50 students, and it's all asynchronous. And yet I teach it as, if I was building this as a HyFlex course, I would start with this kind of design. I would start with the asynchronous design, and then I would use it for synchronous experience as well as for classroom students, if we had classroom students. And so just real quickly, I'll show you, when I get started with this, I give students, we talk more. In a class like this, I do a little video explanation of these, custom GPTs. And so every course I use uses the same set of general support tools, and I'm using AI to build some of these other, kinds of things. You can see a Notebook LM infographic. They all look the same, at least a lot of them do. Anyway, I give them a set like this, and I've talked about these before, so I'm not going to spend time talking about those. And these are designed for generalized support. How do I get started in a course? I need some help understanding the concept. I have like a tutoring tool here, My Learning Helper. Quiz me. Ask me questions about this. Give me a scenario. Actually, how about an adaptive quiz? I want that. Doing breakouts. I don't have time for a synchronous breakout. Can I do an asynchronous breakout? Peer review. I have an assignment due. What can I do for peer review, etc. Respeak. This is what I mentioned earlier. I have a difficult piece of text to understand. Can you tell me a little bit something about it differently? Anyway, so that's a generic tool. But in courses this last year, I've been building more specific tools. And this one uses something called the Practicing Social Science Studio, right? And so I introduced this to students, and this is a tool. This class is a social sciences general education class, and these are students from across the curriculum. I have a lot of computer science students here. I have art students in here. Other STEM kind of students in here. And so and most of them are new to social science. So it's just why they have to take a general education course in it. And so this tool essentially will help them get started in their assignments. And I have each of the three major assignments are supported through the same tool. And so if I go to this tool, I could probably just try to do this on the fly. It will ask me, what are you trying to learn? And I always give them what this tool does. And so, okay. And so it's going to tell me what I can do. This one is designed specifically for this class. And so it's got my assignment descriptions in there. It's got other guidance from me in there. And it says, I tell it, make it real clear. It's not going to write anything for you, but it's going to ask you questions about it. And so if I just decide, I need to get started with assignment 1, where to begin. And so the question is whether a tool like this can help students. And I found that when I do this for my students, I don't require them to use any of these tools. It's all optional for them. And some of them use them and many of them don't. And many of them don't need them. Right? They know they can they're fine getting started with this. And so this is going to walk them through this particular process. So that's an example of a tool that's designed to help students get started with a particular assignment piece. Okay, so let's stop that. Now, I wish this was easy. To get back to the presentation, let's find out. Okay. Okay, we back in the right place? I don't know what you see. Am I showing the big slide or
You are.
this is the big slide? Okay, great. Okay, so that's an example of getting started. Also now, so one of the ways we also use it, we try to build this in so students can get help when they feel stuck, they're confused, they're trying to decide what to do next. So give them a tool to help them with that. And so when we did a pilot survey this last spring on these results. I have another presentation that's talking mostly about that. But one of the things we found is that in these different courses, these are the 3 courses we surveyed, that students who are telling us that they were using AI when they felt like they were stuck in something, which is exactly one of the reasons why we think that this is an important thing to be considering building into the courses, is giving them particular tools designed to help them rather than just letting them go out to the AI, the wild, wild west, if you will, of AI, whatever favorite large language model they want to use or the platform. That can be very helpful, but for students who aren't used to using that to get help with learning, they may just be using it for getting kind of replacing their learning. I'm not going to take the time to go through this next one because I know that we have like 4 minutes left or something like that.
That's
So,
all right. You can go over a few minutes.
all right. Well, this is an example in this course. One of the things that I built the peer review partner tool for and use it most extensively as a class like this one, where for all the assignments, students do a draft, then they're assigned peer reviews, and then they get feedback from peers and myself, and then they do a final version. What we find, and what students have found as well, is that when they use the peer review partner GPT built for, they get much more highly structured feedback based on the rubric and the specifics of the assignment description itself than they do from peers or from me. All right. And there's some intention to that. I don't want to spend my time correcting all their formatting challenges or the use of headings or that. I will sometimes comment about that. Hey, it would be helpful if this was broken up to the blah blah blah. But I'm also giving them my own personal comments at that same time. The AI cannot do that. It cannot do that, and it won't do that. But what it will do is it'll go through really structured and say, tell them that it seems, this particular aspect of the rubric is not well supported by their papers and things like that. And so through the combination of the AI support and the people support, their peers as well as myself, they actually end up with a lot of useful feedback. What students have told us when in their survey, these are the ways that they said they were using it mostly. This is out of 39 students. So 29 were telling us, well, they're planning and organizing work. Right? Makes sense. They're making sense of complex ideas. They're getting started. They're orienting the task and they're reflecting on the feedback itself. And so these are the aspects of the learning moments that we're trying to support with the tools. Students report that they are using them, and sometimes they're choosing not to use them. And so this is a really interesting thing because even though we're providing all these tools and they have access to other tools, there are specific opportunities or points in time where students are saying, "Look, I am choosing not to use AI to this." And so I think that to a great extent, it shows some of them at least are understanding the challenges with trying to use AI for everything and the risks and the consequences of doing that, right? I think one of the interesting side note, I know there was some research that was done about the way that we process visual information and how the use of the AI tools like in the map systems or just the map systems themselves that some of us are using all the time for driving, whether we know the path or not, are actually impacting the way our brains are able to process visual information around us. It's kind of the spatial awareness idea. And that the more you rely on the technology to do that for you, the less it seems like your brain is able to do that like it always used to be. Interesting thing. I know that I'm probably maybe overstating that or misinterpreting it a little bit, but the idea I think is important. If we start using AI for all the things that we could do ourselves, we're likely to lose some of that capability to do it ourselves well. And this is one of the real risks of over use of AI. So when students are choosing not to use AI, even though when it's available to them and maybe even encouraged to them, I think that's showing some wisdom in their own learning approach. So I thought it was good that came out in the comments that they were making in a particular survey. So what we're trying to do here is really design for the learning moment and not designed for the particular tool. So what is the challenge for learning? This is where you have to use your expertise as a designer or a faculty member to understand, well, what's going on here? And sometimes the way we understand where students' challenges are is when we ask them. And so I think if you're going to design this in your classes for students, you do a kind of a co-design process, and you come in with your ideas, but you also you also are asking students and asking them to help you help themselves, right? A range of tools where you're giving them some guidance on how this tool might help you at this particular stage, this particular tool might help you at this stage is a good place to start. But asking and listening to them. One of the interesting things that I know what's going on in our environment is we have a protected environment for students to use ChatGPT. It's a system-wide agreement. I work in the California State University system. And yet when we do surveys, not in my particular classes, but across the board with students in our system, we find that many of them are using AI tools, even ChatGPT, but are choosing not to use it within the protected environment we give them. Now, why might that be? Well, it turns out that we believe, at least, it's because they don't trust that we're not looking at their interactions, and that when they are using them in ways that we don't accept as acceptable use for the use of AI in assignments, that we'll see that, and that there'll be consequences for them. I can't see any of that. I have no idea what they're using the AI tools for. All I can do is see if a generic person has used a particular tool I've put into our GPT environment at the university. But I thought that was really interesting. It was like 25% of the students system-wide are using the supported platform, and about 85 or 90% of them are saying, yeah, I'm using AI all the time. I'm just not using it in your system. Because I don't think they have those words in the survey. Don't trust us, but that seems to be what's coming through. So interesting. So if we can focus on the learning moment and not the particular tool, maybe even if students are choosing to use tools that we're not providing, maybe we can help them use those tools better by explaining to them how AI can support you in this particular piece of process, not just generally. Oh, I've got this assignment due. Here's the assignment description. Here's a few samples that the teacher gave me to use. Can you write it for me? So what we're trying to do is a couple of things here. One is we're trying to preserve critical thinking, right? Critical thinking is it's critical, but these are the kinds of things we don't want AI to replace. If students are having challenging, and many of them will at different aspects of the critical thinking, perspective that's represented here, we want to help them to make those, to get to that point, to make those decisions, to ask those questions, to do some comparisons, not by doing it for them, but by spurring them on, by using this idea of questioning and getting their responses, and then maybe giving them a little bit of feedback on their responses, and then asking another question, more of a Socratic approach, perhaps. We want to protect learner agency so that they're not replacing their decision-making process, that they're actually making those decisions, and including when to use AI, how to use AI, and when not to use it at all. I'm finding that this is probably initially in the last year or so, with students just finding this stuff all over the place. This is probably the thing that I think is weakest for some students, is that they're not sure. They tend to overuse AI in general, I'd say, without really understanding the implications of that. And I think this is where kind of the idea of literacy around what that means, literacy in your particular class and what you're trying to help them teach, can be a really helpful place for you to be. We also want to obviously keep the human connection central to the learning process, whether it's asynchronous or in the classroom or in some sort of combination. Working with others is just critical. This is what we get in education. This is what education is about. The learning is important, but we do it through a social environment. So we can't ignore the social aspects, the social interaction, kind of the active learning aspects of this, active not just with content, but active with other people in the learning process. And this is part of my social constructivism perspective kind of comes through here. But I think learning with others and through others is really important for the kinds of things that we're trying to teach them most of the time. Now, there may be some situations where, it's just me and the content, and I just have to make sure that I am understanding the content, kind of more of a cognitivist perspective, and that's certainly appropriate in many of our classes and with much of our content. But when we're talking about ideas and they're generating understanding, even when they're focused on solving specific problems, the kind of the environment around those problems, why we're solving problems like this, still, I think many kinds. I was trained as an engineer first, and we probably could have been better at teaching engineers how to talk to each other about how we're learning to get through the process. So that's a really important part. So when we're using AI support, AI might be part of all of those different interactions, but it's not replacing the interactions. So when we're looking at using AI tools to support these learning moments, what's the learning need? These are, three critical questions. What should we not be trying to replace with AI or support with AI? What would just remain human? Like, you know what? This needs to have a conversation between you and me, or you and three of your peers. And so, in my classes, I will give them tools to do peer review, an AI tool to do a peer review, but it will not replace the peer-to-peer review that they're expected to do. And how do I make sure they do that? Well, what lever do I have as a teacher? I don't know, points, part of the grade, 10% of your grade. You have to do the peer review with other people. And you're expected not to use AI for the peer review. I mean, as far as your peer review of someone else's work, not okay. Not okay. And so we're trying to figure out, well, where do we not want to try to use AI to replace that? And I think maybe if students, go through this and understand more of what we're talking about, we can get to the place where they are learning more about this part of the AI literacy, and it's really kind of AI learning with AI literacy. No one's talking about that yet. So there you go. There's an opportunity. Learning with AI. And a couple of resources here, and then I'll pause. I'll stop here. I did a series of blog posts in the HyFlex learning community that talks about this basic process, more detail, lots more examples, more explanations. And so you'll have access to the slides, and as well as it'll be linked in the proceedings. But you can also reach out to me at any particular time. I'm going to stop sharing there and look back to the moderator for what we do next.
Thank you, Brian, for a wonderful presentation and keynote. We are going to be taking a short break and we'll resume at 11 o'clock. But in the meantime, let's give a round of applause or little emojis if we can to Brian. And I think you have done a wonderful job in setting the tone for this conference. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.